I say welcome, welcome, welcome. I guess I say that all the time, don't I? Maybe I better change that. But seem like every show I say welcome, welcome, welcome to another segment of Recovery Live Global. I am your host, Jesse Washington, and we have with us today in the studio Miss Catherine McClain. What a blessing, what a privilege to have her with us today. Man, we talking about recovery, recovery, recovery. We done seen recovery from so many platforms. We had young people in recovery. We had seniors in recovery. We had people in recovery, people not in recovery. And now I got Miss Catherine McClain here. And when I was talking, she said, well, I ain't in recovery. I said, you know what? You still welcome, and you could still come, and you could talk about what you see, what you feel, and some insight that you may have to help the people out there in the recovery processes. You got a lot of people that ain't never experienced the actual substances and things like that, but they could still learn something from a show like this. They could learn something from a show like this. So I'm gonna introduce you to Miss Catherine. I'm just gonna. When you hear the word recovery, what come to your mind? What come to your mind?
New beginning.
New beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about
Start
that part.
over.
Let's talk about that part a little bit. So when I say recovery, you say new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When I say recovery, you not only say new beginning, but you say start over.
Correct.
As if something was wrong, as if something was broke, or unless something was wrong, that I'm starting all over.
Or you
and
just
it
need
also,
a new direction.
Okay, and it also could mean that I have had a path already. Because in order to recover, you had to uncover. I mean, something had to happen.
Right, because means to redo.
Okay,
Right.
mean to redo.
Right.
So something had to happen.
Correct.
So when you think of recovery, when I say recovery, you say redo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good one right there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say redo, what's some of the things that come to your mind when you say redo? What's some of the things that may come to your mind when you say redo?
I think in our life journey,
Mm-hmm.
you're always recovering, whether it's from a relationship, employment, or lack of employment. Sometimes going to that grocery store, you got to recover the prices of what you had to pay for.
Oh wow! Okay,
Yeah.
So it can fall in many
ways.
many ways. It can fall.
Mm-hmm.
So then, when you're talking about recovery, because I was talking about addiction one time, and people was telling me that you always talking about drug addiction. What
Mm-hmm.
about some of the other addictions that we have? I said, what do you mean? I didn't know how to place that or put it in. They said, well, hey, you can have a gambling addiction. You can have a smoking addiction. You can have a drug addiction. You can have a shopping addiction. You can have a watch too much TV addiction. You can have a religious addiction. You could just have all these different kinds of addictions, what they was talking about. So today happened to be a show that we're going to let the Holy Spirit lead and talk to us as we're thinking about it. So now that we're here and you right here with me, what would you like to share to the community? Not being a person that can stand up and say, well, I'm in recovery. What could you share with the
Well, I don't want it to seem like I'm not in recovery.
Okay.
I've never had a drug addiction or substance abuse addiction that I then needed to go through therapy on.
Okay.
But in life, like I said, you're always recovering, whether it's from a relationship, and it doesn't have to be a male-female romantic relationship. It can be recovery from a relationship with your children, trying to rebuild a relationship with your family.
Okay.
So in that aspect, so when I think of recovery, like I said, I just feel like it's an opportunity to something happened, and I don't like to say it's a mistake, because I think things happen for a reason. And then from those things, you then have an opportunity to learn from it. And there's a saying that I keep on my mirror, which I just found out was Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
And it says, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And that's the thing I always keep striving for. So even with the aspect of recovery, it's an opportunity to learn.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
I like that. I never lose.
I never lose. I either win or I learn.
That's a good way to look at it. Life, situations, and circumstances, because I was looking at some terminology and guilt say I am. You know what I'm saying? And it say guilt, and shame say I am.
Okay.
And guilt say I did. So okay. I can be what I did, or I could say I did that. It's easier to heal from I did that than I am that.
Exactly.
You
right.
So that sounds like what you're
saying.
Because
I believe you have to acknowledge what it is you need to work on.
Okay.
For the majority of us, is actually easier to point to someone else to say, well, they did this to me, they did that to me, so I did this and I did that. But until you're really ready to make a change in your life, you have to ask yourself, well, what did I do to make the situation become what it was? I was speaking with my younger son, and I asked him how his younger brother was doing. And, you know, he mentioned, well, he sat on his phone, he messed up his phone. And I said, you know, I was a little disappointed because the way you tear up electronics, I would think you would be more like his support system. So then he says to me, well, I was just joking. And we tend to use that phrase, I was just joking, as a get out of jail, free card. So if you say something and it doesn't quite strike right, well, I was just joking, which means what you said is invalid. And I explained to him, instead of you always relying on that, I was just joking, sit back and say, well, what could I have said differently? How could I have received what you said differently? Because I told him, I said, your brother has enough people that are always on him. And it would just be nice if you were just the one person who he could look at and say, you know what, there's somebody out there that has my back. Oh, wow. Instead of just falling into the routine as everybody else, it's always easy to point out what somebody didn't do.
Wow. Wow. You said a mouthful. You said a mouthful with that. I was talking with a conversation with a gentleman who was blind. Man, he was blind. He couldn't see. And so he got a letter from his son that was in prison. And he couldn't read the letter.
Right.
So he asked his oldest daughter to read the letter of what his son wrote him from prison. And she grabbed the letter and she said, Dad, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And I wrote a letter so you could buy me some gym shoes. And I really need the gym shoes. And when you gonna send them? And he said, you know what? I ain't sending him nothing. I ain't sent my boy in prison talking to me like that. I ain't sending him nothing. And so the other daughter came home and said, I see you got a letter from our brother. She said, can I read it? He said, yeah, I don't like how he took it. And she picked up the letter and she said, Dad, can you send me some gym shoes? I have been waiting and waiting. And I need the gym shoes. Can you send me some? He said, go get some money and send that boy some gym shoes. And it was
it's the way you say it.
It was the translation of the letter. The oldest daughter read the same letter. And the younger, they read the same letter,
Mm-hmm.
the same words, the same everything, but it was the attitude from which they read the letter to the blind man.
It's not what you say, it's how you say it.
It's how you say it. It's
That's
something like
always,
that.
it's
And
always
so
how
you're
you
right.
say it.
You're right. People need encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
It's something about that. Matter of fact, they got a new term out in the recovery, and it's called harm reduction, where you encourage a person to stop doing certain things. Matter of fact, they finding out even in the prison system that it's better. Okay, say somebody didn't take the garbage out,
Mm-hmm.
your child.
Mm-hmm.
It's better. They saying rather than fuss at him
Mm-hmm.
every time he don't take the garbage out,
Mm-hmm.
encourage him the time that he do.
Right.
And if you do that, psychologist says that he'll take it out more
Definitely.
by encouraging him when he did it than punishing him when he didn't.
And that's part of my recovery is trying to reconnect with my two younger sons. Because I'm a very logical person.
Okay.
And something needs to be done, you just do it. I'm not a very emotional person. And my two younger sons, they respond differently. So part of what I'm trying to redo is learning how to communicate with them
Okay.
in a way that is more receptive and which then helps me not only communicate with them better, but other people. So there are times I have to sit back and say, okay, well, Kat, how are you going to say this so that they'll receive it better?
Oh wow, you stop and say that?
I do. I
you
have
don't
to ask
just
myself.
impulse behavior. You don't just let it go.
No, because my impulse behavior would be, look, I know y'all done seen this trash sitting out here. This is ridiculous that it's sitting there. That's my impulse.
Okay.
But then I have to ask myself, how are they going to receive it? So then I can say, well, you know what, guys? The trash has been sitting here for a while. Can we just kind of gather up the trash and then somebody take it out?
Okay.
And then not only am I participating in it, but I'm also getting what I need done, and that's the trash. And I'm not yelling at them. I'm not putting them down, because that's something that they told me to. It's like, you always see what we don't do. You never see what we do.
Wow.
And so that's something that I'm learning, not only with my son, but in dealing with people all the time. And we're real
It's
quick
easy.
to say what somebody doesn't do.
Right. Right.
And we never see
or what they did
do.
wrong.
Right. Always.
Rather than some. Everybody do something right sometimes.
Of course. Of course.
But if I'm a person that just only see what you didn't do, or only see what you did that was wrong, then it'll have people wanting to shut down.
Exactly.
And not really want to be a part
Exactly.
of what they're trying to do and be. So it's important to encourage.
And that's something that I see as a retired teacher, as someone that I've had the opportunity to see the recovery process for others, that how can you tell someone you want to help them when you're not taking the time to listen to them?
Wow.
And we want to tell them what to do. But how do you tell them what to do if you haven't listened to what it is they need? And that's something that I'm also learning with my sons, that is not just because I'm mama, don't mean I'm right. And that's a hard thing to admit.
What? You mama admitting
right.
that I ain't right?
I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, and you're not able to learn until you're willing to accept that. Because you can learn from anywhere and anything.
Wow. I'm going to have to take some of these
Yes.
notes.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to take some of these notes. What do you want? You want to be right? Or you want to... Sometimes being right, you kill the relationship.
Exactly.
Now, what do I want out of this? Do
'Cause
I
that
want to
was
be right, or do I want to be... What's the...
It's because there was a gentleman I was talking with, and he was saying that the situation isn't right. And I'm like, and I hear you. I said, but sometimes it's not about right and wrong.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like you said, is what is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Okay.
So, and if you're steadily saying, well, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, okay. But you might not be able to get everything you want right. So you may have to take a different, you have to first of all look at what are you doing to create the situation. So in this situation, they were like, well, I do all of this stuff and I don't get recognized. I said, but are you asked to do it or do you choose to do it?
Uh-oh.
And he's like, well, I choose to. So once you make that decision to choose, nobody has to give you anything. So you can't say that what they're doing is wrong because you're choosing to do these things without being asked, but yet you feel like you should be compensated for something you weren't asked to do.
Now you're doing it for a reason.
Exactly.
You hear what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I'm going to go do this so that you could blow my head up.
That's right.
And point out that I did this.
Right.
And that's another
and that's what frustrates you. Get frustrated.
Yeah, and people need to be in recovery from that.
Yes.
That part.
Yes. Yes.
So it's a lot of recoveries that we could be.
You do. You have to really evaluate why you're doing what you're doing. I had a niece I was speaking with, and she was telling me with her partner, she called him all the time, you know, just to check in on him. But then she got angry because he didn't call her. So I said, well, first of all, did he ask you to call him? Or is that what you chose to do? And she said, that's what I chose to do. So that's your choice.
Okay.
How do you then get mad at him because he doesn't call you
and do your
the
choice.
way that you want? Instead of you calling him because you feel that's what you need to do, you need to let him know, I need you to call me.
Okay.
Instead of you keep calling him thinking that, oh, if I call him, he's going to call me. No.
Okay.
If that's what you need to say that. I need you to call me so many times because of whatever my reasons are, because of a recovery, abandonment issues.
Oh, okay.
That's definitely something you have to learn how to recover from. I know it's abandonment, trauma, rejection.
Okay.
Rejection is a big thing, especially among, I feel that the younger generation, because they have access to so much social media, that their way of processing things is really different from, I'm gonna say, at least for me.
Okay.
I was explaining to my other son that the video games that they play, there's so much excitement, you know, and so many things you got to do to win.
Right.
I said that when your brain makes those kind of connections, it's an adrenaline. But real life isn't like that.
Okay.
Real life is boring and mundane.
And that's what they say.
Right.
It's boring to me.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's because you're sitting here on a video game, killing these, what they call them, the boss.
Okay.
Right. Or you've got to go on this adventure, or you're climbing down a ladder into a depot. That ain't real life.
Right.
But your brain has created these endorphins, and it needs to be fed. Wow. And when you're dealing with everyday mundane life, that's where a lot of my perspective, that's where the anxiety comes in. That's where the depression comes in, because they're not being fed the same way.
Wow, you play that game for 12 hours and then step back into the real world, and the real world can't set you off like that.
Cannot at all.
Can't set you off like that. Now you're bored.
Right.
So now you get another game and
another
that's
game
and another game.
A lot of our children, because my thing is education, that's where I feel our education system is broken, because you're trying to teach the kids the same way you taught 40, 50, 60 years ago. And these kids are not the pen and paper, having somebody stand up and constantly talk at them. A lot of our kids aren't used to having conversations, not with a person in front of them.
Correct.
My son will talk with, and I don't know, every day, he might be on the phone with 10 to 15 different people. And they're all having a conversation at the same time. Okay. But in a classroom setting, teacher's the only one that's supposed to be talking.
Okay.
And their kids, their brains are not It's not right.
Yeah.
You're not feeding their brains. And then you wonder why we're having the problems in our society the way we are. Because we have not adapted to the way they are. You can go into a supermarket and see a 6-month-old on a phone.
Right, I seen one at the restaurant.
And they know how to swipe it. They know how to do all. So this is at 6 months. And then by the time they get into school, kindergarten, now you got this teacher telling them, well, nope, you can't do this. You have to do this. And then I'm going to give you this paper that you got to fill in. These kids, they're like, from 6 months to 5, they've been inundated with all of this. I sat behind a vehicle one time that had the video camera, like the little TV screen. And it was just a red light. But in the time I sat there, the screens flashed. I was like, oh my God.
Right.
This is what these kids are getting before they come into school. So their brain cells are firing. Right. And then they get into a school system and they're told, sit down.
Run, Scott, run.
Right.
Or they go to church and somebody say, pick up your Bible and turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and read that.
Right.
Come on now.
Exactly.
Why are you going to take me back to kindergarten?
Yes.
When, like you say, they electronically savvy and they doing this and that. And some people feel that that's the only way to learn. I mean, that's the only way to learn. And that is not the only way.
That's because that's how we're comfortable with learning.
Okay.
We say it's the only way to learn because that's how we learn.
Okay.
But these kids are not us.
Wow.
So therefore, that's not the way.
So you got to step in their game.
Right.
And I can't do it because by the time they put their technology in front of me, they be talking about, well, Pop, Grandpa, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Why you didn't get it?
Yes.
They said, well, why you didn't know
Yep.
to click this button, click this button, click
Exactly.
this button, and you could have fixed your own phone. Why is you calling me to do this little simple stuff?
Yes.
And to them, it's far
simple.
advanced. So it's a different methodology.
Yes.
But the message stay the same. What I'm saying is the truth is the same, but the methodologies that we got to use to get there is multiple. It's multiple. It's just like say the word of God. Just use that as an example. But the way to get it across, you got to communicate it in the genre. That the person is kind of in, and not just in the biblical sense, but the learning, like you said.
But for me, and we've had discussions.
Yeah.
Even for me, when you're coming at me biblically.
Okay.
That doesn't always doesn't penetrate for me. It does not.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not. I have a spiritual connection.
Okay.
With my Creator.
Okay.
And in that, when I look at the Bible, it's not that I don't believe that there are some truths in it. It says that it's inspired by God, but when you look at how man is, man still does what they want to do because the God of the Bible does not force his will on you. Wow. So even though this is what may have occurred, man then still kind of changes it to fit them. Because this is a question I've always had. There's 4 Bibles, right? There's 4 books by 4 of his apostles.
Okay.
But he had 12 apostles. Why are there only 4 books?
Okay.
Then the one person who was the closest to him and was there when he raised from the dead was Mary Magdalene. Where's her book in this Bible? Mm-hmm. So have I read the Bible? Most definitely. Do I make reference to the Bible? Most definitely. But am I receptive to you dictating my life because of what's written in that Bible? No, because that same Bible was used to put our people in captivity. Mm-hmm. That same Bible was used to go, and is being used, to go to other worlds and tell them that you need to follow this way if you want to be into the kingdom of heaven. While you looking at that book, we're going to go take what we want from you. Mm-hmm. We're going to bring sickness to you. We're going to change your whole life. So I have a problem when you go to telling me about that Bible because man has used that Bible how they choose and how they want to control. Yep. And that's how I feel when it comes to the Bible.
That's good. I mean,
yes.
We're going to take a station break right here, and we'll be back in just a minute. Well, you might be out there and you want to support the Recovery Live Global efforts. You can do so by purchasing one of our Recovery Live Global t-shirts. So I'm wearing one. If you look at it, it's here. We're moved into merchandise. So you can call us at 313-694-2140. That's 313-694-2140. And just say, hey, I want to support the ministry. I want to support Recovery Live Global by purchasing one of our Recovery Live Global t-shirts. And I had shared with those, if you live in the metropolitan area and you want a t-shirt, I'll deliver it. I'll deliver it myself. There's no cost for deliverance. So call us and purchase your Recovery Live Global t-shirt in support of the Recovery Live Global show. We are back, and I'm your host, Jesse Washington, with Recovery Live Global. And in the studio today, we have Miss Catherine McClain. You know something, Miss Kathy? During the break, seemed like we was digging in. And I say, man, let hurry up, break time. Let's get back on the air because we want to capture some of that information that you was talking about. You was talking about recovery, but you was talking about from so many levels that sometimes we forget about and don't even think about.
Not at all.
And with you being a teacher, you were saying that you had a student that may come to your classroom as a little kid, as a child, that kept falling to sleep.
Right.
And rather than some of the other teachers trying to punish him or her for falling asleep, you understand the dynamics that was involved.
Exactly.
Because the child couldn't get no sleep at home.
Right.
And the child felt that this was the safest place in the whole wide world that I could get some sleep in.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just one thing. So that's a lot of perspectives to look at. You got to be careful.
You do.
When you punishing somebody because they're doing something without even...
Especially when they don't have control of the situation. When you look at whether it is someone who does have an addiction, whether it's a child, that addiction then becomes what controls them. It's an illness. And in our society, we don't look at it like that. It's a hard thing to deal with, but it is still an illness. But any illness is hard.
Okay.
You know, because that's one of the things I thought about. I was like, okay, well, I never recovered from an addiction, but I had to recover when I retired from Detroit Public Schools. I had to retire from the fact that I felt like someone who had came out of an abusive relationship.
Oh, when you...
After I retired from Detroit Public Schools.
Okay.
It took me 18 months before I could even step back into the school system. And then being able to be in a different position and to see things differently, I realized that for a large portion of my time with the school system, I did exactly the thing that I'm against now. Okay. There was a curriculum, and so therefore, regardless of what was going on, we're going to follow this curriculum.
Okay.
But that's not what some of these kids need.
Okay.
They have access to information that we never had, or don't even know how to tap into it. So academically, there's a lot of things that they can already aspire to that they don't need in the classroom. But our kids need to learn compassion.
Okay.
Our kids need to be able to learn how to verbalize what they need. Because very rarely nowadays do you have families that sit around a table at dinner time and have conversations. Okay. Most of our kids talk to each other via the internet.
Okay.
And they will talk. I have a son, he talks every day to the same people. And I'm like, what do y'all have to talk about?
Okay.
I can't imagine talking to someone, but every day. And that's their connection to the world for a lot of them. So a lot of, there's definitely our education system needs to have a recovery system. And I think if we could revamp our education system, it would impact the substance abuse. Because a lot of our kids get exposed to drugs in school.
Right, right,
You know?
right. So it need to be there. That type of education need to be there. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So it's all interconnected, but yet we keep it separate. Being able to see adults who are going through recovery process, now it intrigues me because it's like when I taught, and you could spot certain kids and, you tried to intervene where you could, but it's like, this is what happens to those kids who got lost in the system. They wind up here in the recovery system, the recovery services.
Okay.
And I just feel like that could so change if we would change the education system. If we would have tune in more to where the kids are instead of where we think they should be. All of this testing is for what?
Wow. Yeah.
So
yeah, when you think about it, it's
broken.
Yeah,
That's
it was
right.
broken when I was there.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When I think about it now, I'm artistic.
Right.
I'm an artist. I draw.
Mm-hmm.
I fish.
And what's the first thing that, if you're sitting there drawing while the teacher's doing something, what's the first thing that teacher's going to tell you to do?
She say, put that crayon
Put it away.
Put it away.
Right.
Put it away. When.
That's what you needed.
Wow. Okay.
Not everybody. If that's what that child needs, that child should be able to do that. There was a situation where this teacher had given an assignment, and it was supposed to be a 3-4 page paper, a history class. This student did a cartoon, a comic book. Did everything the teacher asked, but put it in a comic book form. That teacher wouldn't accept it.
She rejected it.
And it's like, and that person put more time into what they did than the person who sat there and wrote a paper.
Wow.
So there's such a disconnect with what is going on, and our society is seeing it. That's why I believe you're seeing more people who are becoming substance abusers, becoming, what's the new phrase that with the golfer, Woods, when he got caught, it's like, okay, now there's a sexual addiction.
Okay.
There's the porno addiction. Everything. There's all kind of addictions. But the insurance company makes money off of the addictions too.
Okay.
So they keep, they're going to feed it.
Wow, man.
There's a lot of things that's broken.
Yeah, we done took recovery to a whole nother level. A whole nother level. You want to come back too, talking these kind of levels. But man, just to open that up,
right,
and see recovery from so many different views avenues, and different avenues and platforms, and you seeing it from the child perspective,
right,
and what could motivate them to actually turn away from what's right,
exactly,
and pick up what's wrong, because
But we're not going to do right or wrong. They're going to pick up what they need, and we might say it's wrong, but if this is what that child needs,
it's right
for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Even though I may not see it,
right.
So if I draw some rules and some lines, sometimes I draw it to be broken.
Right. Right.
You know what I'm saying? I draw it to be violated.
Right.
When if I could have engaged
exactly
and massaged and worked with the individual,
right.
So
because
I can
sometimes
motivate
when
them
you're drawing
to do
those lines, you exclude.
Correct. And if I could just find the passion of the person, then I can motivate change.
Yes.
Because their passion.
Yes.
They're right now in the clinical world, there's a term called participant participation. And and they want you now to put down the participants' goals.
Yes. Yes.
Their goals.
But that's how it should be.
And they want you to write it in their own
Yes.
words.
Yes.
Their goals.
Yes.
And then help them to get there.
Yes.
Rather than help them to get what I think they could be and
Right.
where I think they should be going. And
because after I retired from DPS, I was 30 days, I did direct care because I wanted to do something different. And it was adult in-home care. And there was one young lady, she was autistic. She didn't have any verbal skills. Okay. And so the other people I worked with, they were like, well, she can't tell you what she wants. And I'm like, that's not true. Yeah. She can't tell me what she wants verbally. But if she didn't like something, she stomped her foot. Okay. So that let me know that what I'm doing isn't what she wants. Okay. If she wants you to do something, she's going to take your hand and lead her. So they're looking at me like, well, we didn't know that because you didn't take the time to look at her.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So we all have the ability to communicate. One of the things I learned from is the animal world. I watch how they do certain things and navigate, and theirs is purely, in most cases, it's for survival.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, everywhere you go, you can learn if you just take the time. And it's something I had to learn how to do, is just be quiet.
Be quiet and listen.
Yes.
Go a long ways.
It goes a long way.
One guy told me, he gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Which means the ears are just as important. And the eyes.
Right.
It's just as important. There's so many ways to do it. And when you teach it today, a good teacher will understand that part. Mm-hmm. And try to put the mess. Some people learn visually.
Yep.
Some people learn audibly. Mm-hmm. Some people through touch. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many sensors that's in the body that can be utilized to get a message through to a person that's in the recovery processes. And so, man, there's so much. It's a lot of information.
One of the greatest things I learned towards the end of my tenure as a teacher was to ask a child to tell me, because a lot of times, you look at a child who drew a picture, right? Mm-hmm. And you automatically will say, oh, I see a tree, I want to see that. So you're already dictating what's in that picture. So what I had to learn was to say, oh, tell me about what you drew. Mm-hmm. Because what I might see isn't what is actually there.
Wow.
And then that allowed that child to have a voice. Wow. And explaining what he was going on. Learned a lot that way. And I'm trying to use that in my life now, where instead of me being so quick to tell you what I think is going on, I'm just like, well, tell me about it. Help me understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that listening.
That listening
it'll take you a long ways.
Ooh.
And a good clinician, a good counselor,
Yes.
a good preacher, a good pastor, a good mama, a good
Right.
brother,
A good person.
daddy, a good
Right.
person
Right.
would listen.
Yes.
Before they interject what need to be said, need to be done, and need to be.
And sometimes there's no need to interject.
Wow. So sometimes you know something? I've learned that. Mm-hmm. Because some people can talk it out
mm-hmm.
and talk through it
mm-hmm.
and get the answers they need and move on with their world.
Right.
And you ain't said nothing. All you did was listen.
Right.
All you did was listen.
And to me, sometimes that's the best therapist. That is, to be the best sometimes means that you just close your mouth, listen to what's being said, allow that person to process. Mm-hmm. And if you might need to ask a question to get them to thinking, but how can you fix somebody else's situation when you're not living it?
I was a hairstylist for 40 years. Mm-hmm. And most of my clients that came in talked. They talked to me while I was curling and shampooing. And they was talking to me.
Yep.
And they would make another appointment to come back and talk to me some more. I don't know, they wanted their hair did.
Right.
But they wanted to talk some more.
They wanted to talk.
They wanted to talk some
and
more.
And you were someone who were unbiased to what was going on.
Yeah, because I didn't have a doctor lab coat. I didn't have a title. I didn't have none of that.
Or you wasn't the person they was talking about.
Okay. So you hear a lot in that world.
Yes.
And I think it was a client that told me, you might make a good counselor. one day.
Wow.
She said, you might make a good counselor one day. And it broadened my thinking
Wow.
to be able to now go to school for
Okay.
counseling.
That's amazing.
You know,
That's
after
amazing.
after really being a counselor for 40 years.
Right. Right. Without the paper.
Without the paper.
Right.
And then I end up going to school and actually becoming a counselor.
Okay.
And I think that was my groundwork.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's something when you go back and think how things happen and how things happen. But I just thank you for coming and gracing our show today, man. It's been good.
And I didn't
Miss
think I had anything
Catherine.
to talk about.
Yeah, I thank you for gracing our show today, Miss Catherine. Man, it's good. I learned some stuff.
Yeah.
And I hope our listening audience was paying attention, that they took some notes and learned some stuff too. Is it anything that, as we close the show, is it anything that you would like to share with our listening audience out there today?
Every day is a new opportunity.
I'll take that. I'll take that. This has been another segment of Recovery Live Global. Tune in next week, and we'll be back with another segment of Recovery Live Global. It's been good. It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. I'll see you next week.
Stepping on in, stepping on in, stepping on in.